and welcome to the very last episode of season 1 of our BPD Brunch bonus series. This is where we get together with our favorite brunchy beverages to catch up, play games, and talk about all things BPD. I'm your host, Xannie, and I am here today with Katja, Devon, and Jay, and we are continuing our conversation about the last BPD symptom. So what has everybody got for your brunchy beverage? I still have coffee.
I've switched it up. I've got pineapple smoothie.
Oh my gosh, that cup is amazing.
It's actually a really cheap one that costs like £1 from a discount store, but it's so good.
Awesome. So today we're going to share some stories from the stress-induced paranoid ideation aspect of BPD. And like we talked about in our main episode a couple of weeks ago, the main thing that separates this from like the delusional types of paranoia that people experience is we may have a strong emotional belief that something is true. We recognize that there may not be, like, without a shadow of a doubt, tangible proof of this. I'm very excited for today because we have someone amongst our cast who very clearly has experienced both differently. And I think she actually would be the best person to sort of give some of these examples. So, Katja, so you no longer qualify for a BPD diagnosis.
No.
So yay, recovery! But you do still qualify for, is it schizotypal personality disorder? Is that correct? So yeah, tell us about it.
I moved from cluster B to cluster A. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of BPD and STPD, there is quite a big difference. The paranoia is constant because obviously I do still have those transient symptoms with BPD. STPD is very much in the realm of things that are absolutely not going to happen or extremely unlikely to happen. And they are also rooted in a lot of the delusions that I have as well. So I have a lot of paranoia around things like food being poisoned, or most extreme examples that I have caused planes to crash with my mind. Obviously that is not a part of BPD, and for anyone who is watching, like, that is a very clear distinction. It does, however, mean that I cannot escape being paranoid. Like, it is pretty much a permanent state of mind for me. They're mostly like psychotic-like experiences because usually people with STPD, they can kind of be convinced that what they're experiencing or their paranoia is about is not grounded in reality. And that kind of separates it a little bit from the psychosis that you hear about where people are like 100% convinced, like Xannie was saying. Like, for me, you know, generally I can be talked around from whatever it is that I'm paranoid about. It might take a while and it's probably best not to do it when I'm in a really heightened emotional state, but I can reflect on some of the delusions and the paranoia I've had and realise that, you know, actually that was slightly ridiculous. It's not that I have any control over it, but I can usually see on reflection that it is quite unreasonable. With BPD, it is much more around people, I find. So the way that people interact with me, the way that I interact with other people. And a lot of it is centred on me not necessarily reading signs correctly from other people and misinterpreting things. So yeah, I guess that's probably the same for all of you in terms of BPD. Would that be right?
Yeah. That interpersonal aspect really is a big part of what separates like BPD paranoia from other things. I think Katja's example of like being paranoid that she made a plane crash with her mind, she may not be 100% convinced that that's fact, but it's not really an interpersonal issue. The BPD stuff is really about misinterpreting other people's signals, seeing hostile signs where there either aren't any or the level of hostility is much exaggerated in our interpretation of it. It's hard to know like how to react even if somebody is being hostile, because many of us are so used to like this overreaction that it's like, wait, how do I respond to this in an effective way where I'm standing up for myself but not being dysfunctional? Like, what does that mean? And it can be very, very, very challenging. So what are some specific stories that you can think of? For example, Like if somebody doesn't respond to a text right away, this idea of like, oh my gosh, they hate me. Like, are there some
Absolutely.
specific, versions of this that express in your life?
I feel like mine are so textbook. Like that exact experience of like, oh my God, it's been 15 minutes. They hate me. I definitely experienced this a lot less than I did. In my mid-20s, I was like a serial dater. It was a problem. But that's when that really showed up for me.
Yep, same. Textbook stuff. You say hi to somebody. It's something as completely innocuous as that. And they're lost in thought or on the phone or something and don't say hi back. And then that becomes all day of like, why does Steve hate me now? What did I do to Steve?
One of the weirdest ones that I've observed is this like reaction to other people's tone. Usually I really only have this reaction from people who are really, really close to me. So it's like my husband, my dad, my brother, like one of my best friends. I rarely have this with people who are not in that circle. But if one of them comes to me and they're complaining about or just venting to me about another situation, if they sound aggressive in my direction, even if it's not about me, I have an emotional reaction as if whatever they're talking about is about me. And that is one of the things that I still observe in myself and is such a weird experience because I can sit there and tell myself, wow, like, man, my husband had a really difficult interaction with so-and-so. Why do I feel like he's attacking me? I sometimes don't know what to do with that emotional response because I'm like, I now have the awareness to, without a doubt, 100%, I know I can't throw any of this at him because it doesn't have anything to do with me at all. I don't know if any of you experienced that where it's like, it's very obvious that whatever is going on has zero things to do with you, and yet you cannot convince your emotions that that is true.
Yeah, I empathize with that completely. And I also have like a real problem with things that are written online and not being able to tell people's tones because I automatically jump to the conclusion that it's an attack on me because of the way that it's phrased or the wording that's being used. And this is why I just completely avoid comments like ever, because I really struggle to interpret the meaning behind it or the intention behind it. And it happens in person as well when people are talking to me, that change of voice, the change in tone, because I feel automatically that it's a reflection on me. Like you said, Xannie, if someone is angry or annoyed, I just find a way to turn it around to be relevant to me, which is maybe a little bit egotistical in a way, but I do feel like it's a real problem for me to be able to tell from people's tone, like whether it's online or in person, like how I should take them.
That's so valid about things online.
Our individual environments and how words are used around us also like make a huge difference. Like I had a manager once who asked me not to text her the word sure without any more clarification, like without an emoji or something, because whenever, if she said like, could you do such and such thing via text, and I responded to her and was like, sure, I always think sure, like that's how I always say it if out loud. But so many people, and she's one of them, hear it as sure, whatever you say. So now if I use that word, I always try to put an exclamation point after it so that it's obvious that the intonation is like, sure, like, yes, it's high energy, not like, because the way that it sounds, like if I were to put that in with written, I'd be like, the way she heard it, sure, ellipses, sure.
I run into that problem a lot texting my therapist. I mean, I've been working with him for like 2 years or something now. So I understand, like, when there's lots of periods and stuff and he writes really formally via text to not like get offended because it's just, but yeah. And then on my end, sometimes he gets confused about what I'm saying because like, I don't always use punctuation correctly and whatever, but I feel like that's almost like a generational thing.
I think it's always easier if people can use emojis. I've seen tone tags on Instagram as well, and I don't know what they mean, but they seem to be quite useful to people. I have friends with autism, for example, and they find them really useful because it helps them interpret what's being said. For me, if you just stick like a smiley face emoji on the end, I know you don't hate me. Like, it's actually that simple.
They're useful, you know, and absolutely, if I texted somebody and said, hey, can you blah, blah, and they text me back, sure. Oh, no. But yeah, so you got like halfway through that story and I was like, oh, you don't tell me you just said sure. Yeah, I totally empathize with that. And we tend to project on other people how we phrase things too in text. So if I read a text from someone the way I would send it, then there's a lot of nuance there that's imagined because they're not me. If you don't have enough data, you can't solve a problem. So I try not to assume anything, which is very hard.
I think that's the thing as well, isn't it? It's like, if you are so used to interpreting things in some way, like, it makes me really conscious of the way that I interact with other people, and I assume that they kind of think the way that I do. So rather than send in a one-word response to somebody that actually someone else might find completely fine, I over-explain. And then they're like, why is she telling me this? Like, why is she going into so much detail when it could have been a one-word answer? But I just assume, you know, that everyone's like me.
Yes. In a way, like, being on the internet has been helpful, especially like on short form social media where you have a character limit. I've gotten a little bit better at that, and I can go back and be like, does this really add that much to this? No, it does not. I can take this out.
No, I think Devon can relate to this too, was finding out early in life that you're talented at something performative. It's not so much that paranoia is, oh, does this person do these people like me as a person? It's more, do they like what I produce, right? Like being an artist or being a musician or whatever, you have to put that in front of people, and it's terrifying for anyone. But if you stack on that paranoia of everybody's just going to say it's nice because they're trying to be nice, but they don't, nobody actually likes it, you know?
One thing I try to like remind myself of is that like nobody owes you anything. You know, it's like people don't owe you to be like, oh, like, you know, your art's good, like that kind of thing. It's like most people don't just say that shit just to say it, or at least from my perspective. When I first started sharing my art on like Instagram, I was terrified, like so terrified. And I had that like inner dialogue of like, what are people going to think about me? Now everyone's going to know I have BPD. What are the people that I work with going to think of me? They're going to think I'm attention seeking. They're all going to hate me. And then like I started to just, you know, gradually like put more stuff out there. And I was like, oh, I don't care.
Yeah, remembering that people have their own inner lives, that their own complete inner universes separate from yours, that is just as rich and deep and full as yours, and they're concentrating on that and not you. Very difficult to keep in mind.
I think definitely, like, thinking about careers and stuff, obviously I'm not in the arts, I'm very far removed from the arts. I have zero artistic talent, which anyone who knows me will tell you. But one of the things that I'm very paranoid about is being symptomatic and people picking up on that. Now, that's not really so much of a problem with BPD because I've had a long time of masking BPD symptoms. It's a lot harder to hide with a STPD, and although this isn't a conversation about schizotypal personality disorder, you know, it is something that does make me really paranoid. And because of the job that I do where I am a teacher, it's like a performative role because you're standing in front of a class for 6 to 8 hours a day. You are playing a role. You are essentially entertaining people. And, you know, I very much kind of lean into the niche that I've created for myself as that one slightly eccentric, maybe a little bit odd teacher. And when you are dealing with really extreme paranoia, so I'm talking about like this end of the scale, like towards the STPD side of it, it's quite difficult to hide. And then I get paranoid about, can people tell that I'm symptomatic? And then that kind of drives even more paranoia. So it's like a vicious cycle. And I don't know whether you guys have that with paranoia about BPD traits showing through, but I also suffer with that as well. Like, when I'm being really impulsive, can people tell that that's part of BPD? And then I get paranoid about that.
Completely.
Oh, yeah.
Because I work in a hospital where people are very aware of what BPD is. And like, some people know I have it because I've, you know, made some close connections and whatever, and they follow me on Instagram. It's not like a secret. But I think like in the beginning, when I was still carrying like a ton of shame around it, it was very much like, oh my God, like, are they going to think this is due to my BPD? Or are they going to think this is a BPD thing? Like, honestly, like a lot of things just kind of got solved because of like finding self-worth. So I think that's sort of where like the paranoia has died down for me a little bit, because I'm like, you know, I don't need to like be worrying about what my coworkers think of me like all day, you know.
This is one of those symptoms that, like, it's odd to end. I feel odd to end the season on, because it's like the one I probably do still struggle with the most. But I guess in a way it's kind of good, because there's not like a, oh, you're in functional recovery, like things are great. Like, I'm sure Katja will tell you, like, even though she doesn't technically have BPD as an official diagnosis anymore, it doesn't mean that none of those things ever come up. Is that accurate?
Definitely. I've still got BPD traits. So yeah, it is still problematic often.
Some of these things, it's not like other people don't ever struggle with them, right? I know a lot of people who don't have an official diagnosis of something, and they'd still like worry about what someone thinks of them, or has a moment of intense emotion. It's not like we're total aliens.
We just like to take it to like the next level.
Yeah.
We just like to amp it up.
Let's just turn the volume up to 100. It's a good way to end it, because, you know, there's always something to work on. We all can keep getting better. And sometimes I think also it's important to realize that you can get to a point in recovery where you feel pretty okay, and then you realize, ooh, I'm actually okay enough to start dealing with something that I wasn't even willing to touch a few years ago. And I think that that's where I'm leaving this season with, is just this like, oh, like there is still a symptom that is kind of hanging on. And I didn't realize how much it was hanging on, because all the other ones were so big for so long that it wasn't until I kind of got them under control that I could see, oh, wow, this is still a thing. And now I have more skills to be able to attack it, and it doesn't make me, you know, less functional or able to manage my life. It just means that there's more room to grow, and I'm excited about that. So thank you everyone for watching the first season of the BPD Bunch and the BPD Bunch Brunch. We look forward to coming back, hopefully in February, with our second season. So make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so that when we're back, you can hear all about it. In the meantime, you can follow us on our Instagram at the BPD Bunch. That about covers it. So we will see ya when we see ya. Bye.